Today, we're going to talk about the penny. There's been a lot of discussion about whether we should abolish it, what it means at retail, and what it means to consumers. No guest today, just me. I want to take you through a couple of the issues related to killing the penny, abolishing the penny, whatever you want to call it. And I want to take you through a couple things that NACS is looking at. First, why do we even care about the issue? Second, I'll talk a little bit about what do consumers say? Where do they fit in this equation? The third element will be, how would it work at retail? And we do have examples of how it has worked at retail and what it means. And then fourth, we'll just look at what's next. So as we take this journey through the penny, let's just start with, why does NACS care? I want to take you back to the 1980s. At that time, there was a coin coalition that was looking at whether or not we should get rid of the penny. And if you Google Walgreens and NACS and penny, you'll find something about how NACS was involved with Walgreens at the time in surveying what does eliminating the penny do to transactions. Obviously, with convenience stores, we sell speed of service. So the big question is, does it save time, and is that a good idea? And what that survey found out was eliminating the penny would save 2 to 2.5 seconds per transaction. So leave that as a baseline. That's where we were in the 1980s. So take us to modern times. First off, NACS does not have an official position on eliminating the penny. There are other groups that have different positions that relate to mainly the production of the penny, but we do not have an official view on whether the penny should be eliminated. Second thing to stress is convenience stores like cash. And the last thing we would want is something that changes the ability to pay by one means and to another means that might be more expensive. And you all know what I'm talking about, swipe fees. So in no way are we looking at something where we would move cash customers to anything but whatever they want to pay with, because we know that swipe fees cost more, and that is not the direction we want to go down. So let me go back to why we care. Convenience stores have been brought into this news because when you look at the broader issue, and it started Elon Musk a couple weeks ago. There was a story that he said we should get rid of the penny. And then that linked to a NACS story from a few years earlier talking about some of the cost savings associated with that. Then near the end of the Super Bowl game, President Trump tweeted, or X'd or whatever, that we should get rid of the penny. So that started a lot of engagement. Whether or not NACS wanted to be involved, we were involved, because the presumption is a lot of these transactions that involve the penny happen at the convenience store and happen at the gas station. People have these perceptions. That's where you see the give a penny, take a penny. And it's something that there's a lot in the way of consumer perceptions around that. So when you look at the savings, I mentioned the Walgreens NACS study from the 1980s, said 2 cents or 2 seconds savings to eliminate the penny. So we did the math. There's roughly 160 million transactions a day at a convenience store. Roughly 1/3 are cash. And if you take away 2 seconds from 52 million transactions a day, that equates to a little bit more than the equivalent of 1,000 days, or roughly 3 years. So if the penny were to go away, there is a significant time savings across America, essentially the equivalent of 3 days every single day. And that is where NACS fits in on that issue. If it can move people through lines faster, and that's what they want, then that's something worth discussing. So that goes to my second point. We talked about how NACS has been involved in the issue and where it started in the 1980s. The second element is we wanted to know what consumers think about this. So after Elon Musk made his statement about the penny needs to be abolished, we threw together a couple questions and some regular consumer surveys that we already had underway. And we asked a couple questions. Should we get rid of the penny? And then follow that up with future questions. And we'll start out with a basic question. We asked people, no prompting, no background, no anything, should the U.S. get rid of the penny? And a little bit more than 1 in 3 customers said we should. 36% said, yeah, let's get rid of the penny. So that didn't really tell us why. And that was the next thing we wanted to get into. And I know some people say, well, that's push polling, where you're trying to force an issue and try to get an outcome you wanted to get to. But what we wanted to do is really just learn what are the triggers and why somebody would say, let's get rid of the penny. So we thought, let's ask the Elon Musk question. Producing a penny cost more than the penny is worth. Let's ask, are they a nuisance? They're sitting in coffee cups or wherever around the house. And then also the third element is they can save time if you get rid of them because transactions will be speeded up. So we asked consumers multiple different ways. This is a statement. What do you think of this statement? Does it do you agree with it or not? And the cost savings, taking the penny out of circulation, would save the U.S. mint money, tested the top. I believe 73%. 73%. 3 out of 4 people said, yeah, I'm with you on that. The other suggestions did okay, but not as well. And surprisingly, at the bottom, the one that I thought would matter most is it saves time, tested the least well, but that doesn't mean it tested poorly. So now we had a benchmark and we re-asked the question of consumers. Now that you've heard all these different reasons for why we might want to get rid of the penny, what do you think about getting rid of the penny? And support for killing the penny went from 36% to 50%. So pretty significant jump up in terms of people saying, okay, I've heard a little bit more about it. Now I have a reason to want to get rid of the penny. So we did one final thing. We wanted to find out if we explained to them how the process would work, what would they think of that? And I'll be honest, I thought if we ask them and talk about the rounding up and the rounding down, that there might be a level of distrust in all this, because I think that's baked into a lot of retail. People just generally assume that when something is announced at retail, whatever channel, not necessarily our channel, but whatever channel, that it's somehow we need to look at this more carefully because what's really going on here. But we explained it. We said that for transactions that end in a 1 or 2 cents, or 6 or 7, etc., they would be rounded down to the nearest nickel. And then those that would be an 8 or a 9 would be rounded up. And in the end, there would be no difference in terms of somebody having a benefit. And that was the question. We explained it, and then we asked the question. And surprisingly, support for killing the penny jumped another 4 points. So now we are at 54% said, let's get rid of the penny. So basically going through that exercise, once consumers were engaged, learned a little bit more about the issue, 54% said that they're interested in getting rid of the penny. That's not a groundswell, but it's a fairly significant number. And that was just something that we've gotten a lot of traction in sharing that survey, because nobody had data that current that was getting the pulse of what consumers were thinking about the penny. So that's why we care. That's what consumers care about. Let me take you through the third step, which is how that would work at retail. We've talked to folks from Canada, and that's important because Canada stopped making the penny in 2012. And in 2013, they eliminated the penny from circulation. So it took a year from the end of production to give people time to move pennies through, get rid of them, do whatever they needed to do with them. But Canada has not had the penny in terms of transactions since 2013. How's that work there? When you pay electronically, if you pay Apple Pay, debit, credit, etc., there's no change. And first off, backing up just a little, the transaction amount is determined post-tax. So if there's an item that's $1.99, it's after tax, let's just say it's $2.07. That's the amount we're talking about, the $2.07. If you pay by debit or you pay by credit, it just runs through, you see it as $2.07. If you pay by cash, it's going to be rounded down to $2.05. So that's how it would work. What I was really surprised by is I've had a couple reporters ask me over the course of the past week, how many more nickels would this require? How many more dimes would this require? Because you think about it, and in common sense, no pun intended there, but common sense would dictate that if something was formally 3 cents change and gets rounded up to 5, there'd be more nickels in production because of that. So nickels cost more to produce than the 5 cents they're worth. So what next level does that set up? So I went everywhere. I tried to see how much more of different coins are required if U.S. retailers no longer have the penny and they have to do transactions other ways. And went through every of the 100 permutations of change. A couple assumptions I made is, one is take the lowest coin amount. So for instance, 30 cents change would be a quarter and a nickel, not 3 dimes. So look at it that way. What is the lowest number of quarters? And go through that whole process. So as I said, there are 100 different change possibilities. First off, 20 of them off the bat don't change. Anything that is 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents, etc., would not have any difference in change because you're going to be using a nickel, dime, or quarter. There's no penny involved anyway. 40 of those 100 transactions would be rounded down. That means if you pay something and it's 6 cents, you wind up paying 5 cents. If something's 7 cents, you wind up paying 5 cents. So rounding down would not require more of any other coin, but it would take 60 pennies out of circulation if you go through the entire math of the 40 transactions that would be rounded down. So you have 100 change possibilities. 20 are unchanged. I just talked about the 40 that would be rounded down. Now let's look at 40 that would be rounded up. And that means looking at, instead of something that cost $2.08, that would be rounded up to $2.10. And instead of, and how does that affect the change? What it does, when you look through the process, it would take 140 pennies, additional pennies, out of circulation, out of those 40 transactions. And it's mainly, you'd be getting 3 cents or 4 cents. That gets removed as things get rounded up to the nearest nickel, or in some cases nearest dime, or some cases nearest quarter. So going through that whole process, looking at 40 rounded up transactions, and I know podcasts, math, probably not what people love on podcasts, so I'll try to go through this quick. But there'd be 16 more times where a nickel would be used instead of penny change. There'd be 16 more times when a dime would be used instead of penny change, and there'd be 8 more times when quarters would be used to round up. However, so it looks like 16 more dimes, 16 more nickels, etc. But what happens is every time that you'd use a dime would replace a nickel. Every time you would use a quarter to round up, you'd be replacing 2 dimes. So going through this entire process, the end result of 100 different transactions for change is 200 pennies would be taken out of circulation, and it would only require 8 more quarters be used, and no additional dimes, no additional nickels. And 200 pennies is $2. 8 additional quarters is $2. So there's no advantage to the consumer or the retailer. It's a wash. That's the end of the math lesson. But I thought it was fairly illuminating that this did not exist online. And there's nothing that lays out the experience in Canada or anywhere else. So wouldn't affect change drawers dramatically. The other thing in learning from how would it work, I talked to some folks from Canada, and they said the process was surprisingly without drama. And there was a phrase that one Canadian, this is a customer, not a retailer, said that there's usually emotional payloads attached to things when you have a long-standing history and you give up something. There's usually just the nostalgia or whatever. And he said people gravitated towards it pretty quickly. And now it's just like, yeah, why didn't that happen sooner? So again, not advocating for the penny to go away. That's just how it would work at retail, and what consumers say about it, and what the whole history is of how NACS has been involved in that issue. So I guess the final step that we would need to talk about today is what's next. And the answer to that is we don't know. Since that communication on social media from President Trump, there has really been nothing else that has come out of that indicates that a move to eliminating the penny is imminent. That doesn't mean it's not imminent. That just means that we don't have any sense of where it might be going. So to be seen, but it's something that could be moving fairly quickly, or it's something that may be another one of those things that you hear about every now and then, where it's an idea, it had some interest, but it didn't have enough interest to move it forward. So that's where we are in that. NACS will, of course, be doing additional polling to look at the issue and see how do consumers feel about convenience, and convenience by whether you pay by cash, the penny, any other means, and anything else related to convenience. So a couple other final thoughts about polling. If you have the February NACS magazine, we have a article looking at consumer polling related to food service in convenience stores. And there's an article in the upcoming April issue of NACS magazine that looks at how do consumers look at convenience? How do they define it? And who do they consider convenience stores? And then, of course, a nice lengthy sidebar on the cash discussion that incorporates some of the things that we've covered today. So another question I've been asked, should I start hoarding pennies? Will I be rich? Or should I get rid of all my pennies before it's too late? I'm not the expert on that. But every year, the mint produces about 4 billion pennies a year. So in a given year, that's an awful lot of pennies. None of them are particularly valuable for quite a long time, since 1959 when they were wheat pennies. And if you know what I'm talking about, you're probably a coin collector. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. The only reason to potentially save 20, 25 pennies is if for some reason the mint suddenly stopped producing pennies, because only about 7% of current production of pennies has been done for the year. So a significant drop in penny production this year means, yeah, you probably want to grab a couple 20, 25 pennies. Save me a couple, though, because I haven't seen one yet. The other thing is, what about all the other pennies? There probably will be a system where you can use some of those cash acceptors and get your pennies out of circulation, just like you can do right now. But to be determined, because once again, we don't know what the process is, but it's been a topic that's been in the news the last 2 weeks, and we thought, let's just give you a little bit more insight into what's going on with the issue. So that's where we stand on the penny as of February 17th. That could change significantly, and it, as I said, it could change quickly, but at least give me credit for going 20 minutes without throwing any penny puns out there, besides one that kind of slipped in there. If you'd like more, we have more information on our website, convenience.org. There was also a documentary, and it won a couple of awards, that came out in 2020 called Heads Up, When Will We Stop Making Sense? And NACS was featured in that, of course, talking about the angle about how reducing penny consumption or penny usage can speed up transactions. And they covered it from all kinds of different angles. if you want to watch the documentary, I think it's available on all the streaming platforms. As I said, it's called Heads Up: When Will We Stop Making Sense? And if you have any questions about the penny or any other issues that we should be talking about like this, that kind of take things away from the traditional podcast conversation, which is usually a conversation with two or more people, and essentially it's a monologue, shoot me a note, because if it's of interest to you, it's probably of interest to other people, and let's just keep the conversation going about issues that are important to you and importance to the industry. So thanks for joining us today and listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.